Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1033 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. Now that you have, let's begin. You know, it's really getting to the point to where I say this often, but it really feels like we're getting to like endgame One Piece. I mean, this chapter discussed and explained cursed swords, something that the fanbase has been waiting on for like 15 years. Simply getting that reveal is a big deal. Like, almost makes me nostalgic for all the discussion. But yeah, with the reveal about cursed swords at the end of the chapter, it's proven my thoughts mostly right. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description to my most recent video talking about cursed swords, and I did this it was part of my Buddhism discussion, which is now kind of old, time flies. But basically, a big part of my ideas about cursed swords is that cursed swords are, essentially every sword is cursed, or at least most powerful swords. Like, basically, cursed swords are misunderstood and not all that different from other powerful swords, even though they're presented as being unique in the story. I'll explain what I mean by this in a moment. Let's read the dialogue from the chapter. Listen, swords exist to cut people down. When smiths create them, they ensure they can take as many lives as possible. A sword has its own personality. A swordsman must master it and bend it to his will. You think a dangerous sword is cursed? No, that's a sign of great quality. When the weak fear a sword and call it cursed, that is a blade of honor. They should be frightening. They're meant to cause terrible harm. There was one blade I crafted when I was a young man. It was the greatest weapon I had ever made. Its disposition was deadly serious. So parsing through the language here, Kozaburo essentially revealed that every sword has a personality, a distinct personality of some kind. He considered Enma his greatest creation because of its power and its ability to kill. But what's really interesting here is that Kozaburo didn't just create Enma. Kozaburo also created the Wado Ichimonji, so here he's essentially revealing that he thought that Enma was the better blade. But at the same time, he's also revealing that the Wado Ichimonji also has its own unique personality. Cursed blades here are essentially being defined as swords with deadly personalities, which Kozaburo himself believes to be a source of strength for the swords, even as others might fear them. But given that every sword has a personality as suggested here, then basically every sword is cursed, or cursed blades aren't really fundamentally different from others. It's just their particular personality. So if you guys watched the video that I linked talking about Enma and cursed swords and Zoro, you would know that I think that Kozaburo's idea of what a sword is and should be is very, very flawed. And it's something so subtle about this chapter that you almost need that theory to understand why I think this. But he says specifically, like, swords are meant to kill. That is their purpose. And I don't think that that is true. But it certainly explains why he would value a sword like Enma or cursed swords more than others. But another fundamental idea of that theory is essentially, it's about the 6 paths of suffering in Buddhism, how Buddhism relates to the story as a whole, but more specifically for Zoro, and that each of the sword's personalities that Zoro wields will help him grow. I basically think that Katetsu is a true cursed sword. Cursed sword being defined as a sword that wants to kill others. Enma, even though it has an obvious curse type effect, doesn't want to kill. It's not presented in that way. It's more so it wants its user to be worthy of it. It judges its users. Just like Enma, the ruler of hell, judges the souls of the deceased. Zoro also speculates or says in this chapter that Enma's motivation isn't based on malice. So the Katetsu represents anger and killing. If you don't control it while you use it, it attempts to kill either you or other people. And Zoro needed to master these feelings, needed to overcome them and control them in order to control the Katetsu. The quote that we got in this chapter, swordsman is one who tames the sword's wild nature and bends it to their will. So by wielding the Katetsu that wanted to kill and not allowing it to do so except for when Zoro willed it, the sword made him a better swordsman. And the form which represents this is Ashura. Ashura is, in mythology, a demon of anger. So even though this wasn't explained at the time, right, Ashura has never been explained. I believe it to be a direct result of Zoro wielding the Kitetsu. And so this same theory applies to both Enma and the Wado Ichimonji, that essentially, right, Zoro has to control Enma, the path of hell. And when he does so, it might unlock a new form, like Ashura, or a new ability of some kind. Basically, the point of Enma, as I understand it, how it trains Zoro as a swordsman, is the sword wants to cut more than is necessary, and as it does so, it saps the life force of Zoro himself. So by wielding it, Zoro has to be in constant control of his desire to cut, or his desire to be powerful. This is, again, we're in unconfirmed territory here, but I imagine if Zoro gave in to the will of the sword, he would cut so much that it would kill himself. And so I think that every time that you see Zoro's arm shrivel up, it's basically an indication of Zoro wanting to be more powerful, wanting to cut more. And it makes sense for this to occur when he's fighting an opponent that he seemingly can't injure. And as he's going through these struggles, he's fighting against this internal compulsion, both within himself and within the sword. So we have this line from the chapter, "The sword isn't acting out of malice. That means I've just not been measuring up to its standards. You're telling me Odin was easily able to wield you, even while this much haki was pouring out of him? Is that it, Enma?" I think that the reason why Odin was able to easily wield Enma is because he had completely mastered his compulsion to be stronger. That's my theory. Odin is never really presented as a character who is fighting to become the world's strongest swordsman or to be a more powerful swordsman. Odin is just, he wants to adventure, he wants to experience the world. Those are the things which drives him. Those things simply made him stronger as a result. I've said this before, but Odin is actually pretty similar to Luffy, much more so at least than he is to Zoro. Protecting his friends ranks higher than being the strongest, even though he became incredibly strong by protecting the innocent and his friends. Do you see the difference? I think that Odin was the ideal person to wield Enma. First off, you have a strong enough will to overpower the sword, and second off, you're not tempted by the sword's will. So if Enma is still judging Zoro as unworthy, I think that it is for this reason. Because the sword still has at least some ability to influence Zoro, because Zoro gives in to what the sword wants. Or maybe a better way of phrasing this is the sword's test. Although an alternative theory could be that Zoro just simply isn't strong enough for the sword. That would be the more straightforward application, and probably the one that Oda would want us to think at this point in time reading the chapter. But you guys know that I'm in the world of headcanon. But it seems to be this interpretation which Zoro comes to in the chapter. What do? I can only appease it if I keep going all out with my haki, but that could kill me. And then he thinks, no, this is how it's meant to be. So the interpretation of this is that the sword is going to kill me, but I'm going to use it until it does, and we'll see what happens. I have no doubt that this is going to make Zoro stronger, because I have no doubt that Zoro is not going to die. We speculated this very early when Enma was first introduced, but the way that it works, it's pretty much perfect haki training for Zoro. So that seems to be the immediate gain, which we're going to get. But anyway, guys, I'm saying this while wanting you to keep in mind everything that I said before, because I think both could be true. Where this acts as immediate gains, haki training for Zoro, his haki is more powerful, he uses a sword to its utmost potential, nearly killing himself in the process, but defeating King, but then later will need to actually master Enma. And he'll do that by opposing its will, which will lead to another evolution of Zoro's swordsmanship like Ashura eventually. But I suppose the main reason why I brought all this up now is because I think that these are things that this chapter makes me think about, right? It's like Enma's put up on a pedestal. It's so strong, it's so hard to tame. Kozaburo said, "This is my finest creation." But I think logic really tells you that it's unlikely that Enma is Kozaburo's best sword, because the Wado Ichimonji is Zoro's main sword. And I think by the end of the story, we'll see how it was more powerful. Or maybe a different way of phrasing this is, it's a sword which provided Zoro's greatest test to becoming the best swordsman. Narratively, that makes the most sense to me, even though it isn't necessarily a natural thought at this point. Because obviously you can see Enma's curse. You can see what it's doing. You can see how it's making Zoro stronger. You can't see that with the Wado Ichimonji. Not yet. But I thought it was extremely fascinating how Kozaburo, sort of the explanation of the evolution of him as a swordsmith, right? Like, he talked about how Enma was his finest creation. So Enma, in his mind, is greater than the Wado Ichimonji. Despite them being graded the same, Enma has its personality, which he liked more. But he said that he made Enma when he was young. And we can actually see this in an SBS. Somebody asked Oda to draw a personification of all of Zoro's swords. And so he drew a personification of Enma, and it looks exactly like a young Kozaburo, so that was foreshadowing. But now he can't even make good swords at all, right? He hands Zoro some swords. It's like, oh, those are crap. This is the best that I can make nowadays. So his ability to create swords became less than as he got older, which is just that. I mean, that is a noteworthy detail. Again, from the theory that I linked you guys, right? My speculation was that the swords a swordsmith makes are imbued with his personality or are in some way related to the swordsmith's state of mind. So as he was younger, he made Enma, and it's possible that Enma reflected his mindset when he was younger. And as he got older, his disposition or something related to this changed, such that the personality of his swords changed. You know, I'm not sure if this theory is supported or not for the chapter, but it's just something that's on my mind. Like, why do swords have different personalities? What causes that? And what caused him to be unable to create great swords as he got older? That feels important to know. And another important thing that I feel like I need to say here is there's this line of, a sword chooses its wielder. And Zoro thinks, it came to me, it chose me, so it could test me. The vibes that I get from this, and it's kind of difficult to explain, but look, it's like, my theory is that Enma becomes a Black Blade in this arc. That's something that I believe has been foreshadowed. So you wonder if all this about personalities and stuff is going to directly relate to how a blade turns black. It's basically information we will need to know in order to understand and appreciate how Zoro tames or overcomes or masters or whatever is involved in turning a blade black. But if it does turn black, you have to wonder, what is the difference between Odin and Zoro? Because Odin clearly never turned Enma black. So if Zoro does that, especially if he does that pretty quickly upon getting Enma, right, there's got to be something hugely different between the two and how they interact with the sword in some way. But anyway, some of the other reveals about Zoro in this chapter were very prevalent community theories. And I would say that overall it was this stuff about cursed swords that I was most interested in. Zoro getting Conqueror's Haki, I said this on Twitter years ago, and I still believe this now. This was always, like, obvious to me that Zoro was going to unlock Conqueror's Haki or have that ability. It was like as obvious as Zoro eventually going to become the world's greatest swordsman. It's like, of course, at some point in time, he's going to have Conqueror's Haki. So when we got the moment in this chapter, it's cool for the reveal of it, but I've always taken this for granted since I was watching the anime, pretty much. There's been so much foreshadowing about Zoro either having Conquerors or having the potential to have Conquerors that, he was going to get Conquerors. In particular, right, the scene in Punk Hazard with Monet was so absurdly similar to Conqueror's Haki, it's like, okay, this has to be related in some way. So really, the reveal itself of Zoro having Conquerors is not really all that hype to me. Certainly, it isn't surprising in any way. And just fun fact, guys, I also believe the same thing about Sanji. The Pirate King, Gold Roger, had like 4 people on his crew, maybe more than that had Conqueror's Haki. Rox D. Zebek had a bunch of people underneath him that had Conqueror's Haki. It just makes sense for Luffy to also have many subordinates, multiple subordinates below him, which have Conqueror's Haki, or have the potential to unlock it. I will admit, though, that I would be more hyped for Sanji because Zoro was just extremely obvious to me. But Sanji's less so, so it's still I mean, Oda could potentially go in a different route. But it was interesting the way that it sort of unleashed itself, right? The first time that we can see him knock out fodders is as he is thinking about Enma. It's like presented as a battle between Zoro and Enma. Zoro's trying to impress his will upon the sword, and casualties are taken out as a consequence of this. It's just another way in which Enma is being used to make Zoro surpass his limits. This sword is a challenge for him, the greatest challenge so far. And it's like his King's Haki is being birthed or honed from his determination and resolve to conquer the sword. The other main reveal of this chapter that was sort of a community prediction is the Shimotsuke's history with Zoro's village, and Kozaburo being Kuena's grandfather and the father of Koshiro. Oda stopped short in this chapter from giving me what I really wanted, because this was another thing that I kind of took for granted. It was so obviously true, because your village is named Shimotsuke Village, right? So, like, I knew this already, that there was some tie between Wano and Zoro's village. There was a reason why the Wado Ichimonji, a family heirloom of Koshiro, was here. We already knew that Kozaburo made the Wado Ichimonji and Enma. But what I really wanted to know was, what is Zoro's place in all of this? There's some things in this chapter that are teasing it, but not quite there. For instance, Kozaburo left Wano illegally 50 years ago, and he founded this village, but how did Zoro come to be here? Who are Zoro's parents? That's what I really want to know. Oda's teasing it here, but not actually giving us what we want. But there's some little details here which really stuck out to me. First off, the children considered the village to be founded by pirates. It was probably founded by Kozaburo, so as Kozaburo left Wano illegally 50 years ago, it suggested that he was a pirate. I personally wonder whether he joined Rocks. 50 years ago would be about the right time frame. And I just want to throw this out into the vacuum, right? But if Kozaburo was a part of a legendary or powerful pirate crew such as Rocks, then it's possible that Zoro's ancestry and parentage also relates to powerful pirates. I know everyone is speculating, oh, Zoro is royalty from Wano, and that may be true, but throwing that out into the vacuum. But I also have a different theory. And so if you guys follow all my Void Century type theories, my belief is that the Ancient Kingdom was a kingdom of pirates. And so the Ancient Kingdom also was comprised of all the various tribes of the One Piece world. Because we can see these tribes are protecting poneglyphs which inscribe the history and ideals and whatever of the Ancient Kingdom. We also know that Wano is tied to the Ancient Kingdom because the Kozuki clan from Wano were the ones that actually created and passed down the ability to translate the poneglyphs. So the way that it works in my mind is this Ancient Kingdom of pirates unified the world to an extent. They traveled to all the various islands that existed, they made friends on all the islands and brought very diverse people together, such that the king of the Ancient Kingdom, also known as the King of the Pirates from the Void Century, his crew would have been comprised, much like Luffy's crew, of diverse individuals from all across the Grand Line and the world. And he would have allied crews or allied ships under his wing from all the various islands, much like the Grand Fleet now. And so why this was all relevant to say? Well, we have some clues about maybe the history of the world through the giant warrior pirates. Dory and Brogy were the leaders of the giant warrior pirates, but it's revealed that Old Beard and Mountain Beard, or whatever their names were from Elbaf, were actually the leaders of the giant warrior pirates before Dory and Brogy. And the giant warrior pirates broke up when Dory and Brogy started their duel, but Hyrogen has revived this idea, this crew, in the present timeline. But my theory is that the giant warrior pirates is a remnant from the Void Century, that essentially this is a pirate crew that never disbanded, at least not until Dory and Brogy. Basically, the crew itself existed for like 800 years, with each successive generation of captains getting old, retiring, and being replaced. But with this idea sort of in your mind of like crews specific to each island that was allied with the Void Century, it would make sense for there to have been a pirate crew maybe from Wano. So it's possible that Kozaburo knew this or was in some way compelled to recreate this in some way. I'm not entirely sure. But basically the idea I'm arguing for is a pirate crew of samurai. They left Wano illegally 50 years for whatever reason, and were a player for a time before eventually creating Shimotsuke Village. So if Kozaburo wasn't alone, it's possible that Zoro's parents were a member of this crew, maybe the captain. I think you guys will know that the theory that I like most is that Zoro is related to Ryuma, and Ryuma was a member of the Shimotsuke family. But Zoro doesn't actually have to be the son of, for instance, Shimotsuke Ushimaru, who looks a lot like Zoro. Doesn't have to be the direct descendant of this person, while also still being a direct descendant of Ryuma. The Shimotsuke family is very obviously very large. For instance, they had control of 2 of the territories in Wano. So I personally like the idea that Zoro is instead the direct descendant of Ushimaru's brother or sister or something that decided to leave the country because they didn't have ruling responsibilities. And their true lineage, their true history, is formerly being pirates, which is maybe what compelled them to go out to sea. But anyway, I suspect that we will soon get the actual reveal of this, and I am so excited for that. This is just a teaser. It's priming us for what I really want. Anyway, there's more to this chapter. So, to actually start at the beginning, Zoro is attacking King and is unable to damage him. It then pans to Sanji and Queen laughs like, "You're gonna count on the pirate hunter? There's no way that he can damage King." Queen says he's a surviving Lunarian. They were all supposed to be eradicated. Those monsters could thrive in any inhospitable environment the world threw at them. In the distant past, they were considered gods. Which, by the way, is another theory confirmed. Sanji asks how could beings like that get wiped out, and Queen says that's something you'll have to find out for yourself. Oda is hyping up the Lunarians so much, and I really have no idea. I have no idea what he's going to do with this, how he's going to make it make sense, how he's going to reveal how King works. I'm literally at the edge of my seat right now. Like, some of the obvious speculations you can make is Lunarian. Luna means moon. The Lunarians are from the moon. Being able to survive in any inhospitable environment makes sense to be maybe from a moon. But there's got to be some trick, some secret for how he's invincible, basically. That's essentially what Queen suggested, right? That there's some kind of secret. I think Zoro teased this as well in the last chapter, where he speculates that understanding what King is, his race, could help him defeat him. In what way, I don't know. But somehow all of the Lunarians, or essentially all of the Lunarians, were killed. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much my thoughts about this chapter. It was insanely good. I loved the flow of the chapter. Everything about it, really. All the way up to the end where Zoro has the determination to conquer the sword and conquer King. I still think he's going to win. But it's weird because, aside from the information about the cursed swords, what this chapter does more than anything is it hypes me up for the next one. I felt like for as many things were revealed, it more so teased reveals to come, which I am anticipating greatly. I mean, even the subtle reintroduction of the concept of Sanachi. It's a battle cry that gives you courage. The whole idea of it is throwing your life away, right? And that's pretty much where Zoro's at. We thought it was bad before when he got the injection, the pain injection, or whatever that's going to kill him. I mean, Oda is just stacking layers and layers of things that are going to kill Zoro on top of each other at the same time. It's crazy. I feel as though Zoro's going to walk away from this battle in a similar condition as Luffy after Marineford. That's just, I mean, how could it be in any other way? I think it's pretty obvious he's going to survive because Zoro can't die. That's just the honest truth. But he's got to come as close to dying as it is possible to get. I want to see this so badly, and I want to know if there's going to be long-term ramifications. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed, just share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.